Wow, that hurt. It made me stagger back, dropping the drinks. She hit me so hard I think she may have dislocated my jaw. My left hand went to the side of my face, trying to rub the hurt away. I really do think she may have dislocated my jaw. It hurts and clicks when I open and shut my mouth. I looked around the room, embarrassed. Everyone is looking at me. I looked back at my wife. There was fire in her eyes. She was pissed. I don't understand where this anger is coming from. 10 minutes before, we were laughing and mingling at my company's 30th anniversary party. When I say my company, I don't mean I own it. Rather, it's where I've worked for the last 25 years since I got out of college. I'm the director of operations, the owner's right-hand man. We've worked hard to get this company where it is today. It's been 10 years since we had a company party. Our last one was on our 20th anniversary, 10 years ago. I didn't know if I would be staying for another month, let alone another decade. It had nothing to do with the company. It was personal life that had me wondering what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I didn't know what would happen or where I'd be back then. I was contemplating filing for divorce. I had just received an anonymous email from someone at my wife's corporate offices. The email was addressed to me but also to an Elizabeth Jones. I was curious, why was I receiving an email from Bridget's company? I opened the email and my life changed instantly. There was a picture of my wife in a passionate kiss with some man. They were standing in front of a hotel room door. I can remember every detail of that photo, the blue business dress my wife wore as she embraced the man with her hand on the back of his head. This wasn't a picture taken out of context. They were in a lover's embrace, his hand on her hips, his other arm around her back. The door framed the picture of my wife's betrayal, the room number 321 clear as day. It wasn't my wife's room, I checked, and it was reserved in Gary Jones's name. The kicker was that when I tried to find out what room my wife had reserved, there was none. I would find out more details later. I had to leave work to wrap my head around this. I went to Jim, the owner, and asked if I could leave and take the next day, Friday, off. He could tell something was wrong, but he didn't ask, at least not then. When I got home, I brought the kids to Bridget's parents. We would need time to talk, and I didn't want the kids to hear the words I knew I would be saying. When Bridget came home that night, it was about 6:30. Her flight had landed around 5:15, and after she grabbed her car from the long-term parking lot, she made the 45-minute drive home. Bridget works as an area rep for a company out of Chicago. She works out of our home, which gives her the flexibility for the kids, but once a quarter, she has a 3-day meeting at the corporate headquarters. This had been one of those meetings. As Bridget walked in the door from our garage, she was pulling her carry-on luggage with one hand and holding her purse in the other. I was standing in her kitchen, just looking at her. She said, "Oh Kurt, can you grab my suitcase out of my trunk? You might need it, so leave it in there," I said to her. She looked up at me, confused. She could tell I was mad. "What's wrong, honey?" she said, concerned. "You're a lying, cheating witch," I yelled as I held up the picture I had printed off. There were others, but this was the most damning one. She gasped. "Where did you get that?" "Someone from your company cares more about our marriage than you do. They sent it wanting to make sure I knew what was going on." Her face went emotionless. We stood there in silence for at least a minute. "That's not true, Kurt," she finally said. "What do you think? This is a fake picture. Do you think I can't see with my own eyes the passion in that kiss? What isn't true?" "It isn't true that someone from my company cares more about our marriage than I do," she stated. I yelled, "Take your cheating but back out to your car, go to a hotel, go to your parents, go to hell for all I care. Kurt, we need to talk about this. You know I love you and the kids more than anything in life. You have to know that." "Screw you. It sure doesn't look like it from the picture. If you did, you would never have been with him. You need to leave now. Kurt, that doesn't take anything away from my love for you and the kids. If you search your heart, you'll know I love you. You have a funny way of showing it, shacking up with some other man when you're out of town. You have to leave. I can't stand the sight of you right now." "No, I'm not leaving. We need to talk about this. You need to let me explain," she said. "I don't want to listen to your excuses." "If you're not leaving, then I will," I said as I stormed out the front door. I went out to the garage to hop in my truck. Bridget had already come into the garage from the kitchen door. She came around to the driver's side as I was getting in. "Kurt," she said, "stop." "Screw you!" I yelled and cranked the ignition, revving the engine to drown out her voice. I slammed it into reverse, and she jumped out of the way as I squealed out of the garage. I backed out into the street, put the truck in drive, and peeled away. My heart was pounding as I took off down the street. Did she think she was going to talk her way out of this? No way. Just then, my phone rang. Of course, it was her. I didn't want to talk to her. I was tempted to throw the phone out the window, but I needed it to make necessary calls and for internet access, so I turned it off, not wanting to be bothered by her or anyone else for that matter. I drove up to Spring Hill. My wife might try to call around to all the hotels in Columbia, Tennessee, where we lived, but she wouldn't think to call hotels in Spring Hill. As I was driving, I started thinking about who this Gary Jones was. How long had this been going on? Obviously, Gary was married too. The email sent to both Elizabeth Jones and me stated, "These are pictures of what your spouses are doing." Were they planning on leaving us? Maybe they were just waiting for the right time to spring it on us. Well, this may have moved up their plans a bit. So many thoughts were going through my head. I had to do some research, find out as much as I could. I needed information in order to formulate a plan of action. I found a hotel and checked in. I didn't have any luggage, a change of clothes, or even a toothbrush. I headed to Walmart and bought some necessities, as well as a pair of jeans and a polo shirt to change into tomorrow. I didn't buy too much, just what I could pay for in cash. I didn't know when I would be back home, but I didn't want to use a debit card in case Bridget was looking for me. I grabbed a pizza on the way back to the hotel and sat on the bed eating it, not even really tasting it. Bridget, my wife for now, had been cheating on me for a while. Since they were sharing a room, how long, I wondered. I started reviewing our marriage. I know husbands are often the last to know and can be clueless to the signs, but I really couldn't think of anything that would make me question her fidelity. I researched signs of cheating on my phone. There were none of the ones listed. There were no accusations or even hints that she thought I was unfaithful. There were no late-night phone calls or texts that she had to take into another room or outside. She hadn't changed her appearance or her routines. We talked about our days and even made time for each other. There had been no reduction in our sex life. In fact, we were still, even 15 years into our marriage, having sex 5 times a week on average. We never slowed down like so many other couples do, even when the kids came along. She hadn't suggested any new or unusual sex acts either, but then again, there wasn't much we didn't do. I truly didn't see any indication that she was cheating on me. In fact, if you had asked me 2 days ago, I would have told you that I was the luckiest man on earth. I had a wife that I loved, who loved me, and 3 kids, Jared, Jeremy, and Jennifer, that made both our lives that much richer. That made me think of the kids, Jared, the oldest, followed by Jeremy, and finally Jennifer. Yeah, I know, all J names. We probably shouldn't have done that to our kids, but we did. What probably makes it worse is that my last name is Jensen. Jared quickly became JJ because of it, so we insisted on calling the other 2 by their full names, Jeremy and Jennifer. How would the kids take this? I didn't know what the future held, but I would be their father no matter what. If we decided to get a divorce, I would insist that they not be moved. I wanted to continue to play a major role in my children's lives. Divorce? Did I want to get a divorce? No, of course not. I wanted a loving marriage with a loving wife and family. I can't think that any man who has a family wants a divorce. What could I do, though? I couldn't live with a wife who chose to sleep with another guy. That got me thinking, who is this Gary Jones? I needed to do some research. I Googled him. There were a lot of Gary Joneses, but only one worked at my wife's company. He was an area rep for the company, and his area was the Denver region. So every 3 months, they would be at the quarterly meetings together. I knew he was married, so I started searching Facebook to see what I could learn about him. It took some digging, but I finally found the Gary Jones in Denver with a wife named Elizabeth. They had 2 kids, a boy, 6, and a girl, 8. I wondered how she was taking the news. Would she divorce him, make him a part-time dad too? I found her Facebook page and sent a friend request. I figured she'd recognize the name from the email and would hopefully accept the request. I wanted to talk to her, or rather, have a Facebook conversation. I needed to know more. I grabbed my 4th beer and leaned back against the headboard of the hotel bed. How had my life come to this? I asked myself. Was I the reason she cheated? I had tried to be an involved parent and a loving husband. I brought her flowers on occasion, even for no other reason than that I loved her. I always tried to put her needs first in bed and made sure she got off before I did. What had I done wrong? I knew I wouldn't be able to figure out the answers to those questions without speaking to Bridget, but the wound was too fresh to talk to her tonight. Maybe I would be able to talk to her tomorrow, maybe not until next week. As I was thinking that, I thought again about my kids. I had brought them to their grandparents, Bridget's parents, so that we could have it out. We didn't talk long before I couldn't take it anymore. What had she said? It's not true that someone from the corporate offices thinks more of our marriage than I do. How could she say that? If she thought more of our marriage, she wouldn't be cheating on me. Then she said, "You know I love you and the kids more than anything in life. You have to know that." How could I know that if she was sleeping with another man? Then she had the audacity to say, "That doesn't take anything away from my love for you and the kids. If you search your heart, you'll know I love you." That's just it. When I did search my heart, I did know that she loved me, and she loved all of us. But how could she do that? Doesn't she know that by doing what she had done, it does take something away from her love? It takes away the trust one had for her. How could I ever really trust her again? The kids were at her parents' house. What would she tell them? What would she tell her parents? Would she lie about why I had brought the kids over? Would she lie to the kids when they came back home? No, I knew she wouldn't lie. Bridget was as honest as the day is long. She would rather not say anything, or she would tell them that she would tell them later. No, she wouldn't lie. That's another thing that bothered me. How could someone who was so adamant about not lying be so dishonest in our relationship? If I was doing something that made her want to turn to another man, shouldn't she have told me? More questions to ask her when we had that confrontation. I'm not a big drinker, so the 4th beer was making me sleepy. I decided that I should get undressed and try to get some sleep. I knew it was going to be fitful, but the beer would help with that. I probably got about 4 hours of sleep, much of it as a result of the beer. I kept waking up, having dreams of my life as a divorced dad. When the light from outside was strong enough to hinder my ability to sleep, I got up, showered, and put on my new clothes. I turned my phone on and saw more messages from Bridget, both voicemails and texts. She was concerned and wondered where I was. I didn't want to deal with that yet. I decided to go to Cracker Barrel for breakfast instead. I sat by myself, looking at the other patrons in the dining room. Families younger than ours were enjoying themselves as their babies made a mess of themselves and the floor around them. Some people, like me, were sitting alone, surfing on their phones, while an older couple sat across from each other, talking with a look of love and familiarity in their eyes. That couple made me tear up. I had been so stoic up to this point, but seeing them made me think of my dreams. When Bridget and I married, my dream was to grow old together. I hastily finished my meal and left. I drove around the countryside, thinking more about my dreams, our dreams. When Bridget and I met in our senior year at the University of Tennessee, I knew it was love at first sight. She was so beautiful and put together with her auburn hair, jeans, and white blouse. I can remember every detail. We started dating and became exclusive soon after. We graduated, and a year later, we were married. I was all smiles as I stood in front of her church. My family, my parents, my brother, and his wife, had driven down from Franklin, Indiana, to attend. I also had a couple of friends from college standing up there with me, and my best man was my best friend from grade school. I can still remember our promises to each other, to love, honor, and cherish. That was another thing I couldn't understand about what Bridget had done. If there was one aspect of Bridget that I thought was a little strange, it was her thoughts on promises. She doesn't make them lightly. If she makes a promise, she will follow through with it, even if it is immensely against her interests. She feels that strongly, a promise is absolute. How could she promise herself to me, to love, honor, and cherish, and then have an affair? It made me question everything I knew about her. I continued to drive around. Tennessee is such a gorgeous state, from the mountains in the east to the Mississippi River in the west. There is so much nature all around you. It is a sharp contrast to the mostly flat farmlands of Indiana. I definitely consider this my home state now. Even though I was enjoying the scenery, my mind kept coming back to the problem at hand. When I looked at my phone as I stopped for gas, I saw more texts and voicemails. I knew by the tone of the messages that she was worried I had done something to myself. I needed to let her know that I was alive, but I also didn't want to give her any indication that I had read or listened to her messages. It was better for her to think that I had deleted them. I decided to call JJ. We had gotten him a phone for his 12th birthday. I dialed the number, and he answered on the third ring. "Hey, Dad, what's going on? Why do you ask?" I replied. "Mom called here twice last night and then again this morning," he told me. "So, you're still at your grandparents'?" "Yeah. Mom said we could stay overnight last night and kept us out of school today. I think she's coming to pick us up after lunch." "So, what's going on?" "Your mom and I had a disagreement, and I spent the night in a hotel. It's nothing you guys have to worry about, though. Don't tell your brother or sister. That will just worry them." "No problem, Dad. What do you want me to tell Mom when she comes to pick us up?" "Tell her I'll text her later." "Okay, Dad." "Yes, son? I hope you work everything out." "I'm sure we will, son," I told him, but in reality, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about anything. About an hour later, my phone rang. I figured she would call me as soon as she got to her parents and Jared let her know what I had said. In fact, I had been counting on it. I let it go to voicemail and listened to it. She sounded relieved but still worried, and also a little perturbed. Well, she was going to be downright pissed when she got home. I pulled into my driveway, parked in the garage, and went into the house. I immediately started to pack all my clothes and other belongings. When I say pack, I really mean throw my stuff into some garbage bags to get it out to my truck as quickly as possible. I grabbed my laptop and a picture of my 3 kids that we had taken last year. I set my wedding ring on the nightstand on her side of the bed. I wrote a note to my children telling them I loved them and set it on the kitchen table. It made me cry to write all my feelings for my kids in a letter. I would make it up to them sometime after. After I wiped my eyes, I walked out to my truck, pulled out of the garage, and hit the button for the garage door. I watched it go down. It felt like I was closing a door on my life. About a half hour later, I got a call. Yes, it was Bridget. I decided to answer it. "Yeah?" I said in an unemotional voice. "Kurt, what is this?" were her first words to me, not "I'm sorry" or "please forgive me." "What is what?" I asked again unemotionally. "A note to the kids. You've taken all your clothes and I find your wedding ring on my nightstand." "Sounds like you described it perfectly. Why do you need me to tell you what it is?" I said sarcastically. I wasn't often sarcastic with my wife, but when I was, she knew I was mad. "Kurt, we need to talk about this. You don't have to go off half-cocked." "Oh, so that's what it is. He's got twice the size tool as me. That's what you see in him?" "Kurt, we need to talk." "We're talking, Bridget," I said, dripping with sarcasm. "No, we need to talk face to face. You need to come back home." "Where are you, anyway?" "Somewhere where I can think about my life in the direction I want to take it in, somewhere I don't have to look at my cheating wife." She was getting angry now. "Kurt, you come home right this instant." "Bridget, I'm not one of the kids. You can't talk to me like that." "Goodbye," I said loudly and hung up the phone. I shut my phone off and let it go to voicemail. Let her yell at that. I knew I was being difficult, but she hadn't said she was sorry, not even once. That should have been the first words out of her mouth. She wasn't apologetic at all. In fact, she was just the opposite. She was on the warpath. I drove to a motel that rented by the week and got a room. I would decide later what my living arrangements were going to be. As I lay there on the bed, I started thinking again. I wondered what she had told her parents. Her parents had always treated me well. They seemed to really like me. I would need to call them and give them my side of the story. I picked up my phone and turned it back on. There was no reason to listen to the voicemails or look at my texts. I knew what would be there, more of the same. I wondered if she would ever say she was sorry, or if it would be a half-hearted afterthought. I dialed her parents' number, and her mom answered. "Hello, this is Kurt." "Oh, Kurt, thank you for calling. We were so worried about you," she said. I felt more love from her right now than I did from her daughter. "Thanks, I'm okay." "So what did she tell you?" I asked. "She said you had a huge misunderstanding and stormed out before she could explain. She was sure that once you two talked, everything could be worked out." A misunderstanding? That's an understatement, I thought. "So she didn't give you any details?" I asked. "No, she just said you were blowing everything out of proportion." "Well then, let me tell you some details and you can decide if I'm blowing everything out of proportion, okay?" "Okay, Kurt. If it will help you to get it off your chest, I'm listening." "It seems that Bridget, my wife and your daughter, has been having an affair." "Oh, Kurt, I can't believe that." "Well, I was emailed pictures of her, one of her in a very passionate kiss standing outside of a hotel room door. There has to be a logical explanation, Kurt. I can't believe she would do that." I couldn't believe it either, so I called the hotel and asked for a room. They told me she didn't have a room. I know that's the hotel her company uses for all of their out-of-town guests because it is right down the street from the corporate offices. "Well, maybe there was a mix-up," her mom said. "That doesn't explain why she was arm-in-arm kissing this Gary Jones." When I said his name, I heard her gasp. "What do you know?" I asked. "Oh, Kurt, are you sure it was him?" "Well, the email I got was addressed to me and an Elizabeth Jones, and the room was registered to Gary Jones. The email said that they were having an affair." "Oh, Kurt, I'm so sorry." "Well, at least someone is," I said. "So who is Gary Jones? How does she know him?" "He lives in Denver, Kurt. Gary was Bridget's first love. They were high school sweethearts. We thought for sure they would get married. Bridget went to UFT, and Gary went to the University of Colorado. He had received a scholarship and wanted to get out of Tennessee. They stayed together for the whole first school year, calling each other all the time, but during the summer, they decided that the long-distance romance was too hard. Bridget took it hard, but I think she grew to be a more independent woman because of it." "So she's still in love with him and I was her second choice?" I said. "That is not right, Kurt. I know she loves you. When she met you and we would talk, you were all she would talk about. Even with the sometimes trying times in a marriage, she has always spoken very lovingly of you. I know she loves you and the kids. Please talk to her. Find out what's going on." I had to admit that talking to Bridget's mom not only gave me new insight but also made me feel better, if only because I had a chance to talk about it with someone. "Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate talking with you. I don't know what will happen, but I hope that no matter what happens, we can continue to have a good relationship." "Okay, Kurt. I have faith that you two will work it out. Don't give up on your marriage. I believe you would regret it if you did." "Thanks, Mom. I'll give it a lot of thought." I hung up the phone. She really had me thinking, wondering if it was something I should fight for. Obviously, she still cared for this Gary Jones. The question in my mind was where I rated. He was her first love. Would they be looking to renew a serious relationship? Where would that put me and our kids? I needed to find out what her feelings were for this Gary Jones and for our marriage. I texted Bridget, "I'll stop by the house tomorrow night around 6 o'clock. That was all I wrote. She texted me back right away, "Okay. I love you." If she loved me, then why did she do what she had done? I hoped tomorrow would clear up some of the questions I had. Saturday night, I rang the doorbell at 6 o'clock sharp. JJ opened the door and looked at me puzzled. "Why did you ring the bell, Dad?" I didn't know what to say. I had done it to make a point to Bridget that I didn't feel a part of the family anymore. As I stood there looking at my son, I knew that was a mistake. I would always be a part of the family, divorced or not. Then JJ said, "Dad, I don't know what happened, but no matter what, you are my dad." My child was too wise for his age. I think he probably had some idea, even at 12 years old. Just then, Bridget came around the corner from the kitchen. "Kurt, honey, take off your coat. Dinner is almost ready." She had made dinner and was acting like nothing was wrong, just another day with no big problems that we had to deal with. It comforted me but kind of pissed me off too. During dinner, I paid attention to my kids. They seemed happy that I was home but didn't seem upset about my being gone. I guess it had only been 2 days, it felt longer to me. Throughout dinner, JJ was watching me. He could see the tension in my face and the fact that I wasn't paying any attention to his mom. After dinner, we played a few games as a family. I still didn't interact with Bridget much. At bedtime, I tucked the kids into their beds, even JJ. He said to me, "Dad, you always say that problems need to be talked through. Take your own advice." My son had just challenged me, put me on the hot seat, as it were. "I will, son. Are you going to be here in the morning?" "We'll see," I said. I did hope we could find a way to get past this, I just didn't know how. I walked downstairs and into the living room. Bridget was sitting on the couch. I took the chair across from her. We just stared at each other for a minute, then she spoke up. "So, are you going to stop acting like a child and actually talk to me?" So, the first words out of her mouth weren't "I'm sorry" or "I love you." Rather, she had to insult me. That got my blood boiling. "So, how long have you and Gary been involved with each other?" I asked. It was best to address the issue directly. "Kurt, it's not what you think," she said. "So you're saying it's not true that you've been seeing your ex-boyfriend again?" She looked down at her hands and then back up at me. "It's not like that," she said again. "Bridget, you've always been an extremely honest person. I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me, yes or no, when I ask you again, have you been having sex with Gary Jones?" "Kurt, you need to let me explain." She was deflecting, trying to avoid the subject. I looked at her, and she just stared back at me. I saw no guilt, no shame, or remorse on her face. That said it all. I stood up, and she looked up at me. I turned and walked toward the front door. "So you're going to run away again? Why can't you stay and we can discuss this rationally? Because right now I just want to smack that look right off your face. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid I might hit you, and I don't hit women, not yet, at least." I grabbed my coat, opened the door, and walked out to my truck. She had just shown me that my feelings weren't important to her again. It kept coming back to me that she still hadn't said she was sorry. I got in my truck and pulled out of the driveway. I looked up at the house and noticed JJ looking out his window at me. I drove away, crying for my failed marriage and for my children. On Monday, I called an attorney to make an appointment. She was available at 4, so I spoke with Jim, the owner, and left a little early. The attorney met with me, and I explained the whole situation. She asked me if I felt we could work it out. I don't think so. She has yet to say that she is sorry, and the look on her face Saturday night showed no remorse. "Okay," she said. "I'll start the paperwork. I should be able to have it ready to serve on Friday." Where should I have her served? That could be a problem. She works out of our house but is out meeting clients throughout the central Tennessee area most days. How could I make sure she was home to be served? I explained the situation to Janice, and she suggested right after the kids got on the school bus. That would work. She never left the home until they were gone. "Now, Mr. Jensen, you know that if you go through with the divorce, your wife will probably get primary custody of the kids and would be allowed to continue to live in the home. You will probably be responsible for the mortgage, child support, and health insurance for the children. With her job, though, you will not likely have to pay any spousal support. What a kick in the teeth, the cheater gets off scot-free and I have to pay for it. Knowing all of that, do you still want to have her served? I looked at her, thought for a minute, and said, I would rather live in a dump than remain married to her. May I make a suggestion? She asked. Sure, you're the expert. After the initial shock of being served, she may be willing to go to counseling. There, you can both speak your minds with a moderator to keep it civil. Okay, I said. When she gets served, she will probably call you immediately. Make sure you are available to take the call. If she seems at all conciliatory and asks how you can avoid divorce, then tell her that maybe counseling would help. If she agrees, let her pick the counselor. That way, she will see that you are willing to follow her lead on this. Okay, I said again. I probably sounded like an idiot. Kurt, be open to what the counselor says. If I read you right, you would rather stay married than get a divorce. You just need to see some remorse and get your self-respect back. Having your wife acknowledge your pain and say she's sorry will go a long way toward making that happen. I thanked her and walked out of her office with trepidation. I was afraid of what the week would bring. On Friday, I cleared my schedule so that if Bridget called, I would be available. If she wanted to talk on the phone for a while, I would also be available. At 8:15, I got the call from Bridget. Kurt, she sniffled. I could tell she had been crying. I love you. I don't want a divorce. We promised until death do us part. Don't throw everything away. Think of the kids. I will not stay married to you and have you sleeping with your ex-boyfriend, I said directly but not forcefully. Kurt, I'm sorry I hurt you. Wow, she had actually said she was sorry, but it was for hurting me, not for what she had done. At least that's what I heard her say. Please, Kurt, I love you. Please don't do this. She was full out crying now. Bridget, you have hurt me probably more than you know. I just can't see any way past this. Oh, Kurt, please. Can't we talk about this? Try to work it out, she sobbed. Not if you're going to continue to belittle me, I said. Yes, I had to take a jab at her. I'm sorry, Kurt. I was just frustrated that you wouldn't listen and try to understand. Perhaps we can go to a counselor. They may be able to help us both understand. I suggested. She perked up and said, Would you? Yes, but you pick the counselor. You know my schedule. Work it out and let me know where and when. I'll make a call right now. Kurt, thank you. I truly do love you. I love you too, honey. So here we were, either on the brink of reconciliation or collapse. I truly didn't know which way it would go. What was I willing to accept? What was I willing to do? What about my kids? If they were my kids, I hated even thinking that way. But when someone betrays your trust, you start to question everything. I couldn't understand it. If you asked me even now if I thought Bridget loved me, I'd have to say yes. She was everything one could hope to have in a wife. She expressed her love for me in so many ways. If she didn't love me, then she was the best damn actress in the world, and I was the biggest oblivious idiot. That is one of the reasons her betrayal hurt me so badly. I couldn't believe it. Then I thought about the kids. What kind of effect would this have on them? I knew that kids of divorce have problems, but so do kids of parents who stay married. I would have to do my best, if it came to that, to show them love and let them know that none of this is because of them. A few hours later, I got a call from Bridget. She had found a counselor that she liked, who could see us at 7:30 on Wednesday. She gave me the name and address. Okay, I'll be there, Kurt. Now that we have this appointment, won't you come back home so we can do some preliminary talks? We need to talk about it. I need to explain. I think it is best that we wait until at least Wednesday before I come back home. But, Kurt, the kids are asking where you're at. They need you, and I need you. Goodbye, Bridget, I said and hung up. The kids, she had to throw them in there. That made me feel guilty. I wondered if I didn't go home soon, would it have a lasting effect? I had to stand firm, though. I knew that if I gave in now, I would lose all my self-respect. The appointment is Wednesday. What did I expect? I knew the counselor wouldn't have a magic pill to solve all our problems. Ultimately, what did I want from the counseling? 1. I wanted to know why. 2. How long had this been going on? 3. Does she still love him? 4. Does she still love me? 5. Did she ever really love me? 6. Does she want to end up back with him? 7. The big one in my eyes. How do I ever trust her again? 7 things. I'm sure I would come up with more along the way, but these 7 had to be answered to my satisfaction, or there was no hope for our marriage. That night, I lay there in the motel bed. My mind kept reviewing our life together. I couldn't understand it. There was nothing that I saw that could explain it. I didn't get much sleep that weekend. Monday morning, Jim came by my office and asked if he could take me out to lunch. Of course, I said. All right, I'll drop by about 11:45, and we'll go to the Southern Tray Steakhouse. Sounds good, I replied. My home problems were obviously affecting my work. Jim didn't just take me out to lunch for no reason. At the restaurant, we sat down, and after we ordered, Jim said, "Spill it." I looked at him. Don't give me that look. We've been working together for 15 years. What's going on? I looked down at the table and mumbled, "She's cheating on me." What? I can't believe it. Are you sure? I have photographic evidence. Not graphic, but it is obvious that there is more than just kissing going on. Holy, I'm sorry. I still can't believe it. You two seemed so much in love every time I saw you together. That's what's killing me. I never saw anything, no signs, no comments, nothing. If you would have told me 2 weeks ago that she was cheating on me, I would have laughed at you and called you crazy. I just don't understand it. What did she say? He asked. Not much, but I didn't give her much time to say anything. I'll tell you what she didn't say. She didn't say she was sorry for what she had done. Not once. So what are you going to do? I filed for divorce and had her served. I needed her to see the seriousness of the situation. My divorce lawyer suggested counseling, so we're going to see one on Wednesday night. That's probably sound advice. Try to find out as much as you can. Maybe you can work it out. Yeah, maybe, I said unenthusiastically. Can I give you some words of wisdom from my own life? He asked. Sure. As you know, I divorced my first wife about 10 years ago. She cheated on me too, but to tell you the truth, it wasn't all her fault. I was so focused on my company that I didn't make time for her. I put her second in my life. Your spouse doesn't want to be second in your life. I learned that a bit too late. She tried to hint to me and even told me outright that I needed to focus more on our relationship, but I didn't. So she found the attention she needed from another man. If I had it all to do over again, I would definitely take the time. Even now, if she were to come back to me and ask for a do-over, I would give it my damnedest. That isn't going to happen, though. She remarried, and as far as I can tell, he makes her happy. My second wife was a mistake. I kept wanting her to be like my first wife, and she couldn't meet my expectations. So here I am, pushing 50, going home to an empty house because I keep looking for someone just like my first wife and never find her. I thought about what he said and then said, thanks. Don't give up on your marriage just to turn around and try to find someone just like your wife, he said as he stared off into space. It's the old adage, only with a personal perspective. Would you be better off with her or without her? I didn't want to admit it, but I knew the answer. That night, I called JJ. Hey Dad, when are you coming home? Were his first words. I don't know, JJ. I'm meeting with your mom tomorrow night. Yeah, she told me that she would be gone for a while and asked me to watch the kids. Of course, I said. You're a great son, JJ. I love you. I love you too, Dad. Can you put Jeremy and Jennifer on the phone? Sure, let me go get them. When Jeremy came to the phone, he asked, Hey Dad, when are you getting back from your conference? JJ told me that you were at a conference but didn't know for how long. What's a conference, Dad? So my oldest son was covering for us. He knew we were having problems but didn't want to upset his siblings. That boy was smart for his age. I'm not sure either, but I'll let you know as soon as I figure it out, I told him. That seemed to appease him. We chatted some more, and I told him I loved him. Then his sister had to talk to me. Hey Jennifer, how are you, sweetie? I asked. Oh, I'm fine, she said. Then she started telling me all about her day at school. Oh, the innocence of a little child, oblivious to the troubles around her. It was refreshing. I could have listened to her all night long. Then I heard her mom come into the room and ask her who she was talking to. Daddy, was her response. Okay, but tonight is bath night, so you'll have to tell Daddy bye and come with me. Okay, bye Daddy. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. JJ came back on the phone. Dad, we all miss you. I hope you'll come home soon. Thanks, son. I love and miss all of you too. I'll be back soon, don't worry. I knew, or rather hoped, I would be. We just had to figure out a solution to this problem and then set some ground rules. As I hung up, I got a text. It was Bridget. You could have called me. I would have let you talk to them. All I said in return was, okay. Wednesday night, I walked into the counselor's office at about 7:15. It was pleasantly decorated. I hoped that this meeting would be productive. I had to admit to myself that I really wanted to go back home. I waited in the lobby, having a seat on the love seat. A couple of minutes later, Bridget walked in. She smiled at me. I loved that smile, it had always made my day when she did that. She took a seat in the chair. I wasn't sure if she was trying not to make me uncomfortable by not sitting next to me on the love seat or if she felt the distance between us. A few minutes later, the counselor came out of her office. I'm sure she noted how we had chosen to sit. Her name was Dr. Mary Swift. She was about our age, maybe a little older. She was pleasant. Please take a seat on the couch, she said. We both sat down, about 1.5 feet between us. Kurt, I wanted to be upfront with you and tell you that I have already had a session with Bridget on Monday. She has told me a little bit about the situation. What I'd like to tell you first is that my goal is to save your marriage. What I'd like from you is your willingness to cooperate. I nodded my head. Okay, then what do you want to get out of these sessions? Figuring that Bridget had already put her spin on it, I came right out and said somewhat hostilely, I would like to know why my wife of 15 years has been cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend. At this point, I pulled out the picture from the email. Okay, well, I think we can get some answers to that. Is there anything else? Yes, I have a list, but the biggest one is, if we stay married, how could I ever trust her again? When I emphasized if, I could see Bridget stiffen. I see. Well, we can work on that too, the counselor said. In talking to your wife, I have to say that 2 things about her personality stand out. The first is honesty. She doesn't lie. That will be very helpful in these sessions, plus it will help you to trust her again. I nodded my head. The second is that promises mean a lot to her. This could also be helpful to reconciliation, but it may also be a stumbling block. I nodded my head again. Bridget, you seemed frustrated that Kurt wouldn't let you explain. Kurt, would you be willing to sit quietly and let her explain? Sure, I said abruptly. Okay, Bridget, go ahead. First, I want to say I love you, Kurt. If you asked yourself that, you would have to answer honestly that you know I do. Next, I want to say that I'm sorry that I hurt you. I was about to interrupt her and ask if she was sorry for what she had done, but the counselor saw me about to speak and said, Kurt, please give her this time. I breathed a heavy sigh and nodded. Bridget continued, Kurt, the man in the picture, as you know, was my high school sweetheart. We were in love. We tried to make a long-distance relationship work during college, but by the end of the first year, we both knew that it wouldn't last, so we broke it off before we went back to college for our sophomore year. I think we were both heartbroken. The doctor cut in and asked, that was close to 20 years ago. What happened to lead us to this point? Bridget continued, Gary couldn't make it to our 15-year high school reunion, but he got a class registry showing my married name. He looked me up on Facebook, and we reconnected. Facebook? I've seen more marriages destroyed because of that accursed website. People can't see the real person, only the persona they want to display or the memories they have from their past. The romantic reunions rarely last, though, leaving the debris of heartache in their wake. The counselor said, "I'm sorry, I don't mean to get up on my soapbox. Please continue." Bridget said, "Well, 3 years ago, the company I worked for was planning an expansion into the West. Gary had been unhappy at his previous job, so I told him about the area positions that would be opening up. He applied and has been working there ever since. So he's in Denver and you're here. How did this come about?" I asked, pointing to the picture I had pulled out. Bridget's shoulders slumped. "Once every quarter, all the area reps have to go to a 3-day meeting at the corporate headquarters in Chicago. That is where we started meeting and reconnecting." The doctor had been watching me as Bridget talked. She noticed my physical response when Bridget mentioned they reconnected. I was crestfallen. "I'd like to give Kurt a chance to ask you one question at this time." "Go ahead, Kurt." "So this has been going on for 3 years?" I asked. "Kurt, you know I won't lie to you. Believe me when I say no. We both remained professional for the first year while we were reconnecting as friends. Then, 2 years ago, we started holding hands when we went out to dinner, and then there were kisses. Finally, we spent the night together." I slumped on the couch. Bridget had noticed my change in posture and said, "But Kurt, I love you. You are my husband. We will be together forever. So how could you do that?" I barked. "Every 3 months, you're off to get some strange for 3 days, then come back to your poor, clueless husband." "It's not like that," she insisted. "You keep saying that. Are you trying to tell me that he hasn't been screwing you every 3 months for the last 2 years? No, he hasn't been intimate with me. We've just been sharing meaningful moments together. That's even more concerning. Do you have feelings for him?" "Kurt, he was my first love. We had a deep connection and promised to support each other whenever we could." "So supporting each other means being involved with him whenever you're together?" "Kurt, it took nothing from you. Did you not feel loved before I went to my meetings? Did we not make love like we always did when I returned? Did you not feel loved? How did that take anything away from you? Kurt, you know I love you. I'm there for you and the kids whenever you need me. Have you ever felt that I didn't love you, that I didn't honor you, or that I didn't cherish you? It was a promise I made to you on our wedding day, to love, honor, and cherish till death do us part. I have never regretted loving you, marrying you, having kids with you, sharing my life with you. Search your heart. You know what I'm saying is true. My time away, once a quarter, took absolutely nothing away from you. I have never not given you my all." I couldn't believe what she was saying. Was she justifying her cheating because I wasn't there, therefore it was taking nothing from me? And what about our wedding vows? What about forsaking all others? Bridget, you talk about our wedding vows. What about forsaking all others? What about that promise made in front of all our friends and family? Kurt, I know this will hurt you, but those words were never in our vows. Go watch the DVD. I did 2 years ago when I was struggling with my conflicting promises and emotions. The minister never included those words, and no, I didn't ask him not to. So don't blame that on me. So because the minister missed it when he was saying the vows, that justifies you committing adultery? It allowed me to fulfill my promise to Gary that I had made before I ever met you. So, in short, you are not my exclusive wife. I have to share you with someone else? I screamed. That's when the counselor stepped in. Kurt, Bridget, we are almost done with our time for this session. I think before anything is said that you may regret later, we should end here. I do have some homework for you both, though. I want you both to write down what you feel are aspects of a good relationship. I want you to bring them with you next week. Don't confer with one another about them. I want each of you to see what the other thinks is important in any relationship. We walked out, neither of us saying a word to the other. Needless to say, I didn't move back home that week. I did call the kids every night, though. I called them on Bridget's phone. There was no reason to make it worse than it already was by intentionally slighting her. When I spoke with her, I was cordial, but I didn't spend too much time talking to her before I asked to speak to the kids. When the next Wednesday rolled around, we were back in the counselor's office, waiting for our appointment. I had spent a lot of time on my list. I tried to be concise, so I put it in bullet point format so it all fit on one page. Bridget had a notebook with at least 10 pages filled up. This might be a long meeting. When Mary, the counselor, came out to get us, we stood, and I let her go in first. As we sat down, this time at opposite ends of the couch, Mary said, "All right, so this week I don't want to discuss the past at all. I want to discuss our thoughts. I trust each of you brought your thoughts on what makes a good relationship." We both nodded our heads. "Well, Kurt seems to have the shorter list, so let's get his done first," Bridget said in a tone I had rarely heard her use. Mary counseled her, "Bridget, Kurt's list, if I'm reading him correctly, is probably a list of single words that he may have to expound on. Just because your list is probably written out in sentence form does not make his list any less important." Wow, she schooled her. Bridget was taken aback a bit but nodded to Mary anyway. "Kurt, why don't you get us started? And if you allow, I'd like to be able to ask questions so we can understand what it is you're trying to convey." "Sure," I said, unfolding my sheet of paper. I started down the list. "Love," I said. "I don't mean to stop you already, Kurt, but last week Bridget asked a question that I think relates to this. Can I ask it again now?" "Sure." She asked, "Have you ever felt that I didn't love you, honor you, or cherish you? Could you answer that now?" I hesitated. Well, up until 3 weeks ago, I would have said never. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that she loved me. Now I have my doubts." Bridget was going to say something, but Mary cut her off by saying, "Okay, thank you for being honest. Hopefully, with this counseling, we'll be able to alleviate those doubts. Next is respect." "What do you mean by that?" "Not cutting each other down, especially in front of other people or the kids. Understanding that I work hard to provide for our family," I said, looking over at Bridget. "As does she," I added. "Okay, I can see where that could be important. If a person didn't respect their mate, there would probably be bruised egos or damaged psyches. Do you think she respects you?" "Yes, she has always shown respect, except for the other day when she talked to me like I was one of the kids, demanding that I come home this instant." I looked at Bridget. She was a little red in the face. I wasn't sure if it was from embarrassment or anger. "So throughout the over 15 years you've been together, she has almost always shown you respect?" "Yes, she has. In fact, that is one of the things I am most proud of. I've seen other wives cut their husbands down in public. It pissed me off and made me feel sorry for them." Bridget smiled when I said I was proud of her. "Okay, go on." "Commitment," I said. Mary nodded but didn't say anything. "Patience," I continued. "What do you mean by that?" Mary asked. "Being willing to be patient when I don't do things either the way she would like them done or in her time frame." "Okay, forgiveness. That's a big one. Marriages that I see hinge on that one. Here's my question for you. Are you willing to think about trying to forgive Bridget? I know you may not be ready to forgive her now, but are you willing to think about it?" I sat there in silence for a minute. Bridget was getting antsy. When I put that on my list, I knew that I would have to forgive her if we were going to survive this. I had thought long and hard about it. Now that the counselor was asking me point blank if I felt I could try to forgive her, I was hesitant to answer. The thing about forgiveness is that if you do forgive someone, you have to be willing to open yourself up to being hurt again. Was I willing to do that? "I can try," I stated. "That's all we can ask," she said. "Go on." "Honesty," I said. "Tell me, do you consider your wife to be an honest person?" I looked at Bridget. She was looking directly at me, wanting to know if I believed her, wanting to know if I knew that everything she had said about her loving me, about not wanting a divorce, about doing everything for me, was all true. Yes, she is honest. I've never known her to tell a lie. Even when I confronted her, she didn't try to lie her way out of it. You heard her last week. In fact, sometimes she's brutally honest. Mary nodded her head. "What's next?" "Trust," I said. We're going to come back to that one in future sessions. That one will take a long time and effort. I'm letting both of you know now, this is the big one. It may take months to get back the trust, or it may take years if you don't forgive her first. I nodded and could see out of the corner of my eye that Bridget's head was down. Okay, what's next? Good communication, I said. Do you guys talk? To be honest, I think that is one of our strongest points. We've always been able to talk about anything. That is also why it hurts so much. She didn't talk to me about what she was thinking or the dilemma she was having. I looked at Bridget again. Her head was still down. Okay, we'll touch on that one later. What's next? Selflessness, I said. What do you mean by that? Being willing to do things for your spouse, even if it is not something you necessarily want to do, but it is important to her. Mary nodded again. Okay, what's next? Just one more on my list, I said. Physical intimacy. Okay, so where were you two at with that before all of this? This I have no problem with. She is always willing. I know so many other men who say their wives are stingy with it, only giving it up when they want something from the guy. It's been over 15 years and it still feels like the honeymoon has never ended. Again, I looked at Bridget. She was red from embarrassment, but her smile couldn't be any bigger. God, I love that smile. Mary looked at us and then said, Kurt, Bridget, our hour is almost up, but we are making such good progress tonight. Would you be able to stay for another session? Bridget grabbed her phone and said, let me call home and let our son know we'll be about an hour late. She made the call, and then Mary said, okay, Bridget, it's your turn. What have you got? First of all, let me say that I appreciate the list you made, Kurt. I'm sorry if I belittled you before about its length. I hope you'll hear my list and know that I truly do love you, and you're already fulfilling many of these, Bridget said. That made me feel good. I was eager to hear what she had to say. First thing is something that you already do a great job at, saying and showing me that you love me. I've known you love me even before you said it for the first time so many years ago. Mary nodded and smiled. The second is understanding and forgiveness. I know that is something that we, with Mary's help, will work on. I hope you will try to forgive me. Mary spoke up and said, Bridget, at the risk of destroying the progress we've made tonight, I need to ask you a question. What is it? Bridget said pensively. I know this is only our second time together, but there is a big elephant in the room and we need to address it right now while you're talking about this subject. Bridget, my objective throughout the whole process is to try to save your marriage. With that in mind, I heard you say you want understanding and forgiveness, but I have yet to hear you ask for it. Bridget, are you sorry for what you've done? Bridget bowed her head. I knew that you were going to ask that question at some point. I've been struggling with the answer. She looked up at me, our eyes met, and I could see tears there. I'm sorry that what I did has hurt my husband and our relationship, but I'm not sorry for what I did. I was fulfilling a promise to someone who means a lot to me. I was helping him in a way that I knew how. I was fulfilling a need that he had. He told me that he and his wife were experiencing intimacy problems and he needed to feel the touch of a woman. I know that it hurts to hear it, but I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. I hope you can forgive me for hurting you while I helped someone else. At that, I got up. She wasn't sorry she did it. She would still be doing it if I hadn't been sent that email. Hell, she might still do it anyway to fulfill her promise to help him in a way she knew how. That was a deal breaker for me. I needed a promise from her that it would never happen again. I looked over at the counselor. She could see that I was on the verge of blowing up, so she said, let's stop there. The feelings are too raw to continue. I think she was surprised at what my wife said. That sounds good to me, I said harshly. Bridget, would you be willing to stay a bit longer so we can discuss this one-on-one? Yes, she said as she started crying. Kurt, could I see you in a one-on-one session sometime before next Wednesday? Sure, I'll call you to make an appointment, I said as I walked out the door. Well, I wouldn't be moving back home this week either. I was starting to doubt that I ever would. The next day at work, everyone pretty much stayed out of my way. I hated bringing my problems to work, but I couldn't get what she had set out of my head. That night, sitting on the motel bed, I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. Elizabeth Jones had accepted my friend request. I sent her a private message asking her to call me, giving her my phone number. I didn't know how often she checked her Facebook or if she had notifications on her phone, so I would wait until she called. Within minutes, I got a text reply. She was just sitting down to dinner but would call after dinner. Oh yeah, she's 2 hours behind us, I thought. Okay, I will wait. About an hour and a half later, I got a call. Hello, I said. Hi, this is Liz. You asked me to call. Yeah, I just wanted to talk to you, maybe fill in some gaps that I have and hopefully fill in some gaps you may have. Okay, she said hesitantly. I don't know how much you know, so I'll just let you know what I know. I went through everything I knew and that Bridget had said. Gary needed her because of intimacy problems they were having in the bedroom. Problems in the bedroom? The only problem we have is that all he ever wants is a whim. Thank you, ma'am, and he hardly ever wants that. Not enough for me, at least. We do it maybe once every 2 weeks because he is either too tired or not in the mood. I was beginning to wonder if he had a medical condition. Then I got those pictures. I was furious. I told him he was going to have to quit that job if he had any hope of saving our marriage. In light of what you just told me, I still might divorce him. He's lucky I didn't throw him out of the house when I got that email. She was a spitfire. So Gary had been lying to my wife. If they were as close as what Bridget's mom described, he would know of her need to always fulfill her promises. He took advantage of that somehow. I needed to let Bridget know the truth about her ex-boyfriend. Liz, could I ask a favor of you? What is it? Then I'll let you know. Bridget and I are going through counseling. I don't know right now if there's any hope for us, but when I decide that it might be possible, could I get you to call me when we are at the counselor's office? I want Bridget to hear from your own mouth what you just told me. It may be enough to make her see the light when it comes to their relationship. Sure, I can do that. When do you have counseling? Wednesday nights. Unfortunately, that's dinner time for you. I'll order pizza and have it delivered that night so I won't have to worry about fixing anything. I really appreciate it. It may be a couple of weeks yet. We have some big hurdles to get over before I feel we're on the road to recovery. Well, I'll wait for your call or let me know through Facebook. We hung up, and I thought about what I had just learned. This was going to destroy Bridget's relationship with her ex-boyfriend, but it would go a long way towards saving ours. Saving our marriage, however, hinged on her willingness to see that what she had done had destroyed my faith in our relationship. If a promise made to someone 20 years ago held more importance than our marriage, then I would rather take my chances with a new wife, one that might not be as ideal as she is, but one that I could trust. Someone who wouldn't have the mindset that it didn't take anything away from me when she was with him. The phone call gave me hope, though. Finally, a way out of this mess. Would hearing what Liz had said be the come-to-Jesus moment for Bridget? Would she finally see the light? I was thinking about what I had wanted to learn by going to the counseling sessions. Already, after only 2 weeks, I had almost everything I wanted. 1. Why? Because her ex was a scumbag and used her good nature against her. 2. How long? 2 years, every 3 months, for 3 days. I'm sure it was at least twice a day, so 6 times every quarter, 4 times a year, that's 24 times for 2 years, 48 times. Now I knew. 3. Could I get over it? 4. Does she still love him? She won't after she hears what he did to her. She despises people who lie for personal gain. 5. Does she still love me? Yes, I know she does, and that also answers number 5. 6. Does she want to end up with him? No, especially after she finds out he's willing to lie to her to get her to sleep with him. So the only one that is still going to take some work is number 7. How do I ever trust her again? I'm sure the counselor will have some insight into that. It might not happen overnight, but I knew with time I would trust her again, maybe not the unquestionable 100% trust one had before, but trust nonetheless. On Monday, I left work early at 4 o'clock to go to an appointment with the counselor. Kurt, can I ask you a question? Sure. I've never seen this in all my years of counseling. Bridget has a very strong need to fulfill all her promises. Has she always been that way? As long as I've known her. I worry about that. Someone like that could put themselves in grave danger just to fulfill a promise. Have you ever known someone to break a promise they made to her? She asked. I didn't have to think about it. Yes, her college roommate. They were best friends. What happened? It was our senior year. Gina was her best friend. They had made arrangements to go to Cancun for spring break. They planned it since September. Bridget had bought the plane tickets and made all the reservations. Everything was all set. In January, Gina met a guy that she really liked. By March, she was head over heels, and when he told her that he wanted to go skiing in Vail, she said yes immediately. When she came home to their apartment and told Bridget 3 weeks before spring break that she wasn't going to Cancun, Bridget flipped. She disowned her best friend, and they haven't spoken since. We ended up going to Cancun together, so it wasn't a total waste, but she never forgave her. That sounds about what I would have expected. Someone close to her must have reneged on a promise to her, and it has affected her adversely ever since, the doctor said. That fact may actually work in my favor in this situation. How do you mean? She asked. I'll let you know once we get the bigger problem solved. By bigger problem, what do you mean? How can I get her to see that what she did was wrong? I don't know that you ever will, Kurt. In her mind, she wasn't taking anything from you when she was fulfilling her promise. You weren't there, so she wasn't taking away time spent with you. Also, you weren't there, so she wasn't taking away any love from you. In her mind, she still loved you, actually, still loves you with all her heart. Doing what she did took none of that away from you. So I go through the rest of my life wondering if she has other promises out there that will allow her to stray? That would be a good question for her. Ask if there are any other promises to anyone that would cause her to betray your trust again. If she thinks about it and can't come up with any, then ask her to promise not to betray you like that again. This was a lot to think about. I didn't know Bridget's attitude toward promises, but is that an excuse to cheat? The doctor saw me thinking and said, "Can I put it in another perspective for you?" "Sure," I said. "Anything to try to understand it. Let's say you knew someone who needed a blood transfusion and they had a rare type of blood. You also had this same type of blood. Would you be willing to give them some of your blood, knowing your body will produce more and you'll be fine?" "Sure." Well, that's how Bridget looked at it. She was giving something that she had, that he needed, and she would be fine afterward. It wouldn't affect her adversely. Now my head was spinning. I couldn't wrap my head around it at all. She did seem to have some good insight into Bridget's thought process, though. Was that going to be enough for me? Could I give her a pass because of her mindset, knowing she loved me and I loved her? Would that be enough? Part of me wanted to say yes, but another part wanted her to pay for her betrayal of our marriage. Damn, why can't life be easy? I left her office more confused than when I came in, but I also had some insight that I would never have come to on my own. So, do I look at her issues as a mental disability? If it were, it sure would make it easier to process and even easier to forgive her. I had a lot to think about. Mary and I talked about Bridget's other personality traits. I know that Mary probably had some qualms about discussing Bridget and things discussed in a private session, but her main objective was to save our marriage. Any insight she could give each of us to make it easier to reconcile would help meet that objective. I told her that Bridget's attitude toward honesty had always been a blessing, giving me confidence that my wife was being true to me as she made her rounds as an area representative. I knew she was mine and mine alone. I told Mary, I know that sounds caveman, but it's not, because just as she was mine, I was hers. I'm not the best-looking guy in the world, but some women are looking for security, and I have a solid job and treat people with respect. I've been flirted with and even propositioned, but I always stood firm, knowing that for both Bridget and me, there was no one else. Now that is in question. I'm not sure if I can trust her to continue in this job. I understand, Kurt, and we'll work on trust. Let's get you two back together first. As I sat there, I thought about the call from Liz. "Hey Doc, I think I may have a way to help with that." "How is that?" she asked. I told her what Liz and I would like to do. I explained that this would help Bridget understand that making promises can leave her alone and betrayed. She agreed, and I told her I'd call her the next day to confirm that Liz would be able to make the call. When I got to the motel, I powered up my laptop and sent a Facebook message to Liz, asking her to call me when she had a chance. At 10 o'clock, I got a call from her. "Hello, Kurt. I had already planned on calling you tonight when I got your message on Facebook. Thank you for calling. Elizabeth." "Liz, please." "Okay, Liz. What were you going to call me about?" "I wondered if this Wednesday would be the day to call. Also, I thought of a way that maybe we can help out both of our situations." "Okay, whatever I can do, I will." We discussed her idea, and it sounded like, if it worked, it would possibly be a relationship killer, at least for Bridget and Gary. I truly hoped it worked. I also told her of the counselor's observations, and I could actually hear sympathy in her voice when she said, "Well, I hope you two can work it out." I actually hope so too. I kept thinking about what the owner of my company said. I wondered if, should I divorce her, I would always be looking for a replacement just like her. At work, I was able to compartmentalize my personal life so that it was not affecting it as much, but I definitely wasn't my usual self. Wednesday night, I was at the counselor's office at 7:15. I was as nervous as a guy on prom night. I truly hoped the plan worked. At 7:25, Bridget walked in. I could tell she had gone the extra mile to look appropriately nice for our meeting. I was sitting on the love seat, and she sat down on the love seat also. Sure, there was a gap between us, but we were sitting next to each other. "Kurt," she asked, "can you come back home? The kids are starting to get out of control. I think they are starting to doubt the conference explanation. They just want you home." In order for her to know just how tenuous the situation was, I said, "After last Wednesday's revelation, I don't know if I'm ever coming back." I paused, looked at her, and said unemotionally, "We'll see how tonight goes." "Kurt, don't talk like that," she said. "You know I love you. If I knew that, we wouldn't be here." I had hoped that tonight could be a watershed moment. We would see. At that point, Mary came out and got us from the waiting room. She could tell that we were both nervous, but for different reasons. When we sat on the couch at opposite ends again, Mary started talking to us. "Bridget, Kurt," Mary began, "from our individual meetings, I can tell that you both love each other greatly, but love isn't enough. Bridget, Kurt needs to be able to trust you. Right now, in his mind, he can't trust you, at least not where Gary is concerned, and I dare say probably not where anyone is concerned, at least not right now. In his mind, he's wondering what other promises lurk out there, waiting to destroy your marriage forever. Kurt, Bridget needs understanding and forgiveness from you. If you can't forgive her, then there is no point in continuing. What she needs is to know that you're willing to try and that you can see a time when you can forgive her. Believe me, she knows she has hurt you." We both looked at each other. We didn't know what to say. "Bridget, we never got through your list last week," Mary said. "What I'd like is for you to continue but be open to what Kurt may say or do tonight to try to get more understanding." Bridget hesitated and said, "Okay. Well, I think the next thing on my list is, like, on Kurt's list, communication. By that, I mean real communication, not just how was your day, but sharing thoughts about his hopes, dreams, goals, and fears. Let me share in those, and you share in mine too. We communicate well, but I feel like we need more, especially now. That way, we can better understand each other." Right then, my phone rang. Bridget looked at me with a perturbed expression on her face. I held up my finger and answered the phone, putting it immediately on speaker but muting our session so that any sound we made wouldn't go through. "Kurt, what are you doing?" "We're in a meeting," Bridget said angrily. "Would you please listen?" "Maybe it will help us," I said. She looked confused. Then we heard a voice over the phone. "Gary, I got the kids' pizza tonight because we need to talk. I need you to tell me again what happened and why I shouldn't just throw you out. I've spoken to a lawyer. She assures me that I would undoubtedly get the kids and be able to stay in the house while you pay all the expenses. I want you to be truthful with me. If I find out you haven't been truthful, then I will file for divorce." Bridget looked over at me. She had a deer-caught-in-headlights look on her face. Like I told you, her name is Bridget. She was my high school sweetheart. So how is it that you were kissing and groping her in a hotel hallway? Well, after our last class reunion, someone from the committee sent everyone who couldn't attend a registry of all our classmates with their married names included. So I looked her up on Facebook, and we started chatting back and forth, he said. So far, what he had said was just what Bridget had told me. Their stories weren't in conflict yet. Then Liz accused, so you told her you were going to be in Chicago and she met you there last month? Gary shot back, no, about 3 years ago she told me that the company she worked for was looking to expand into Colorado and they were looking for area reps like her. So that is why you took the job? Liz asked. So you could sleep with your old girlfriend? She continued. Gary replied, no, she begged me to apply, telling me that we would be able to see each other every 3 months for 3 days. At this point, I looked over at Bridget. She was just staring at the phone. Liz continued, so she told you that if you took the job, you could sleep with her every 3 months? Not in those exact words, but she did imply that, he said. I looked at Bridget. She was still staring at the phone but was shaking her head no. So you've been sleeping with her every 3 months for the past 3 years? Liz accused. No, I swear. I kept fending her off every time. But then 6 months ago, she cornered me. She told me that unless I slept with her, she would tell you that we've been having an affair the whole time I've worked there. I didn't want to do it. I told her that I loved you and that she should look to one of the other unmarried reps to have an affair with. Honey, you have to believe me. I didn't want to do it. I have no feelings for her. That's why I broke it off while we were in college. Now I just wish she would let me be and let me do my job when I'm at those meetings. She was possessive when I was with her, always jealous of any girl that said hi to me as I walked down the hall. I tell you, she's nuts and should be seeing a psychiatrist. I was actually scared she might hurt me as well as ruin our marriage. I wish we could confront her, but she would just lie and probably say I was the one that pursued her. You've got to believe me. You can't trust her. I'm glad that I'm looking for another job so I never have to see her again. I can't take it anymore. I was watching Bridget the whole time. Her expression went from disbelief to confusion and then to anger. In fact, she started yelling at the phone, "You liar. You son of a witch. Tell the truth, you a-hole." I picked up my phone and ended the call. I looked at Bridget, and her face was in her hands. She was crying. I know it sounds mean, but I had to know. I said, "Are you crying because he lied or because he told the truth?" She continued crying for a bit and then said, "I'm crying because I have wrecked our marriage, possibly forever, over a piece of crap that I once cared for." How could he say those things? Kurt, you have to believe me. I never begged him to come work there. Also, I definitely didn't say, imply, or even hint that I wanted to have sex with him. Then she looked me straight in the eye. Kurt, you know I have never lied to you. I'm telling you now that I did none of those things. I stalled his advances until he told me that he wasn't getting any intimacy from his wife. You've got to believe me. I struggled with the decision, but I had promised him it was only to comfort him and only during the quarterly meeting times. Kurt, it wasn't taking anything away from you. I had no thoughts of us getting back together. I love you, Kurt. You have to believe me, she pleaded. She was desperately trying to assure me while she dealt with the betrayal of a person she thought cared about her, at least in some way. How much of what he said was real? How much was just his impressions of the event? How much was him lying to cover his own butt? Unless my wife has been playing a game ever since I met her, I had to believe that her trait of being honest was not an act. I could believe her. I knew that in her mind, she was helping a person she loved in a small way and also fulfilling her other character trait of keeping her promises. So where do we go from here, Bridget? I asked. Kurt, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that I took your love for granted. I'm sorry that I put my past promise ahead of our marriage. So what if he comes back and is divorced, needing comfort again? He can go to hell for all I care. Kurt, can you forgive me? I'm so sorry for hurting you. From now on, you come first in front of everything, even the kids. Of course, they will be a close second, she said, smiling at me. She knew the kids were the most important things in our lives. We both knew that. Mary, who had been silent throughout the whole exchange, addressed me. Kurt, so what do you think? Can you forgive her? Can you trust her? Is there anything else that you need to make you trust her again? I had thought about this a lot. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I turned to Bridget. I need to be able to trust you. I love you, Kurt, she announced. I continued, first, I want you to go to our family doctor and ask for an STD test. If she asks why, tell her the truth. Bridget looked at me, and I could see the shock on her face at what I was asking. I was asking her to confess to a woman she had known since before she had gotten her first period, a person who had answered all the female questions she was too embarrassed to ask her own mother, a person who probably felt more like a grandmother to her than a doctor. She looked deeply into my eyes, tears welling up, and nodded her head. Second, I need you to promise that you will never see him again. Ever. She thought about it for a minute and said, Kurt, I can't promise that. I started to get up. I was going to leave. No, Kurt, wait. I can't promise that because his family still lives in this town. I'm sure there will be times when he comes home to see them. I might accidentally run into him at the grocery store or something. I thought about it. Okay, I can see that. How about not going anywhere you know he'll be? She thought some more. Kurt, there will be class reunions and, God forbid, funerals for friends and classmates. I don't think that is possible. How about if I don't go anywhere I think he might be, without you? No funerals, no reunions. I thought about it. It was just like Bridget to think things through before she promised even more. Okay, I accept that, I said to her. One more thing. In order for me to trust you, I want you to quit your job. Mary said, Can I interject? I looked at her, unsure of what she was thinking, but I nodded. Do you have a dog? She asked. I looked at her, confused as to why she was asking such a strange question. Ah, yes. Is it an indoor or an outdoor dog? She's mainly an indoor dog, but of course, we let her out occasionally. So you just let her out to roam? No, into our backyard. Is the backyard fenced? Yes. What does this have to do with anything? Humor me. Why is your backyard fenced? So she doesn't run away, I said. So you don't trust her to stay around. So, in actuality, you trust the fence to keep her at home. I nodded. Demanding her to quit her job is saying you don't trust her not to run away, Mary said. I sighed. Yeah, I guess it was. Yes. As of now, I trust her as much as I trust my dog. But if she has to keep her job, then I'm going with her to Chicago for her meetings. So now you want to put a leash on her, just like your dog? Mary asked. I slumped. I knew I had to decide whether to take the chance. What kind of relationship would we have if I had to keep my eyes on her 24/7 or track her whereabouts with her phone or hire a PI to follow her? As of now, she has not done anything that gives me confidence that she will not cheat on me again, I said with a calm voice. Kurt, I love you. Ever since I met you, I knew I would love you forever. Please, let's get past this. Don't give up on us, she pleaded, tears in her eyes. Damn it, I hated her for what she had done to us, but I knew I loved her too. My boss's words started running through my mind. Don't give up on your marriage just to turn around and try to find someone just like her. So I didn't give up. That night, I went back to the motel to grab my stuff, not to stay. I went back home for good. We continued to see the counselor. She worked with Bridget on boundaries and on making good choices, even if those involved promises made. She also worked with both of us to strengthen our relationship. I halted the divorce. I had decided to give it a try. Over the next few weeks, we talked more than we had in years. In the counseling sessions, I learned about the other things on Bridget's relationship list. There were many similar ones to mine, but two I hadn't thought of were showing affection both verbally and physically, but not just in the bedroom, and quality time, date nights, of course, but also being present when we were together in a room, creating a physical and emotional bond. That night, when I came back from the motel, Bridget was waiting for me in a romantic outfit. I was eager, having been without intimacy for weeks. However, when I reached for the box of condoms, she reacted strongly. I told her, "It's either these or we wait until you get the test results back. It's your choice." Fortunately, she agreed. A week later, the results were negative, and we enjoyed a long, passionate night together. We soon returned to our regular routine, and with our efforts and counseling sessions, our marriage grew stronger. Bridget eventually left her job, but not immediately. At the next quarterly meeting, Gary was absent. He had indeed left. Liz, despite knowing about his deceit, decided to give him another chance but kept him on a tight schedule. With Gary gone, some of the other area representatives and office staff began showing interest in Liz, assuming she was available due to her past with Gary. When Liz told me about this, I suggested she speak to Human Resources. However, she was concerned that the complaint might bring up the affair, so she decided against it. Shortly after, she left for a new job as a sales rep with a local company. Going forward, we continued to work on our relationship. There were times when I would get melancholic thinking about what had occurred. When she noticed these times, Bridget would say something to the effect of, "Kurt, you always had my love. It didn't take anything away from you." As time went by, the melancholic times became fewer and farther apart. Our life had returned to normal. I loved her and the kids, and I knew she loved me too. It would be great to end the story right there. However, about 8 or 9 years after the event that almost destroyed my marriage, things started to change. Bridget and I were in our late 40s now, and as often happens over time, our lovemaking frequency had dwindled. A lot of that was due to the onset of menopause. Bridget just didn't have the drive she had for so long in our marriage. At first, I was worried that maybe, just maybe, she was cheating on me again. You know what they say, once a cheater, always a cheater. I started investigating, checking her phone for unknown calls or texts, watching her times leaving and coming home from work, and observing if her wardrobe was getting sexier. I even went as far as to put a locator app on her phone. There was nothing. I found nothing. So one day, I asked her, "Bridget, is everything okay?" "What do you mean?" she asked. "Between us." "Yes, Kurt, I love you now just like I have always loved you." "Why?" "Well, we just seem not to be connecting like we used to." She looked at me, and I swear the woman could read my mind. "This is about sex, isn't it?" I hemmed and hawed and finally said, "Yes. We used to do it all the time. Now I'm lucky if we do it once a week." "Kurt, you know we're not 20 anymore. My body is going through changes. I just don't have the desire like I used to." There it was, the dreaded change. My life would never be the same. We talked about it, and while I wasn't happy, I had to acquiesce to not pressuring her. She promised me every Saturday night, unless one of us was sick. The times we did it became more obligatory than orgasmic. Our life moved into more of a routine. We would work during the day and watch TV at night. Saturday night became date night, and I would get that obligatory sex. When football season started, we made a deal. We would watch her reality shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and my football on Monday and Thursday. That worked until one Thursday, when there was a reality show on that she just had to watch. "Kurt, can I watch my reality show?" "Honey," I said, "you know that Thursday is football night." "Yeah, but this is a special night." "Please," she pleaded. I sighed. "Okay, you can watch it." "I'll just go down to Bear Creek and watch the game there," I said, not wanting to argue with her. Bear Creek is a sports bar in town. So I started spending Thursday nights at the sports bar. One Thursday night, the game was a blowout, so I started watching hockey. I was really getting into it, and the Predators were doing great. That next week, on Monday night, I was sitting down to watch the game when Bridget came in and said, "Can we watch my shows?" "It's Monday night football night," I replied. "Wouldn't it be better to watch at the bar with the other fans?" she asked. "So you'd rather I watch at the bar than be here watching with you?" "You'd enjoy it more, and that way, I could watch more of my shows." She was right, I would enjoy it more. While I enjoyed spending time with Bridget, she wasn't really into football. So I got up, kissed her goodbye, and went back to Bear Creek. I spent my time at the bar splitting between the football game and the hockey game. When Thursday came, I didn't even bother sitting down to watch the game. Around 8 o'clock, I said, I'm going to go down to Bear Creek and grab a beer and watch the games. She said, okay, have a good time. I think she was happy that I wasn't going to be around pestering her to watch football. One Monday, as I was watching the game, I heard a familiar voice say, hey, Kurt, it's nice to see someone I know hanging out here. Can I watch the game with you? Sure, have a seat, I replied. It was Terry from work. We talked as we watched the games. That night, when I went home, Bridget asked me how watching the game went. Good. In fact, Terry from work saw me and came over to watch with me. We talked, booed the refs, and cheered on our team. It was a good time. That's great that you had someone to watch the games with, she said. We started watching the games together every Monday and Thursday night, so that became our new routine. I would come home, eat dinner, watch TV, and on Mondays and Thursdays around 8 o'clock, I'd say, I'm going to grab a beer and watch the games. In June, our company had its 30th anniversary party. We hadn't had a party since our 20th, so there were a lot of new faces. We all had name tags on. It wasn't a fancy affair, but we had hors d'oeuvres and wine, as well as dancing. I was now the director of operations, so I was mingling with all the employees and their families. That's when this story came in. I was grabbing a glass of wine and a drink for Bridget when I turned around and saw my wife talking to Terry. I made a beeline to where they were standing. As I was approaching, I heard my wife, looking at Terry's name tag, say, Teresa, how do you pronounce your last name? Most people call me Terry, and it's Abier, like I'm going to grab a beer, Terry replied. Bridget turned and saw me. That's when she hauled off and slapped me hard. Months later, sitting in Mary's office, I was going through it again for the 8th time. Terry and I started watching the games together at Bear Creek every Monday and Thursday. After a few weeks, Terry suggested, why are we sitting here paying high prices for beer? Why don't you grab a 6-pack, and we'll watch the game at my place? Terry's daughter had left for college that August. The reason she was going to Bear Creek was that she was lonely sitting in her house all by herself. She had lost her husband 5 years ago in a car accident and had spent all her non-working time raising her daughter through her teen years. One of the things she missed about her husband was spending time with him watching sports. They both enjoyed it. She felt that watching the games at the bar with other people would help alleviate her loneliness. Then she saw me, someone she knew, and we started watching the games together. So she was out at a bar looking for companionship. Bridget stated, no, she just wanted someone to talk to and watch the games with. We started watching the games at her house. We didn't start having sex right away. About a month after we began watching the games at her place, she came out of the bathroom and said, Kurt, can I ask a favor? At the time, I thought maybe her toilet was plugged or her sink was clogged and needed fixing. So I said, sure. Is your toilet plugged? No, she said, this is a bigger favor. She had just needed a new transmission in her car, so I thought maybe she needed some cash to make ends meet. I said, sure, if it's something I can do, I will. Then she told me about her loneliness and that she had foregone any relationships while her daughter needed her through the teen years. What she wanted was to feel human touch again, no strings attached, no commitment, no expectations, just human touch. Bridget, you know I love you. It took nothing away from you. I was just helping her. It was something that I could do to help her. Search your heart. You know I love you. I've always loved you since I first laid eyes on you. You know I love you and the kids more than anything in life. You have to know that I'm sorry I've hurt you. I have never not given you my all, other than those few months when we had those problems. Have you ever felt that I didn't love you after all the problems we went through? You chose to turn around and cheat on me. How could you? Bridget asked, it took nothing from you? I repeated, you cheated on me for 6 months. She accused, it was 2 times a week for 6 months. Figure that out. Twice a week times 4 times a month times 6 months, that's about 48 times. You spent 2 years, twice a day, I bet. Times 3 days times 4 times a year for 2 years, that's about 48 times. I replied, accusing each other seems like we are now even. So that's why you did it, to get back at me? I thought we had worked through that. I thought you had forgiven me. Now, my love, just like you, I was trying to help someone in a way that I knew I could. Your justifications came back to me. I was helping her, and it took nothing away from you. I was always there for you. The time I spent away from you, at your insistence, took nothing away from you. Then Mary cut in, Bridget, Kurt, we've been through this many times in the last few months. What we need to do now is move past this. You've done it before, I know you can do it again. You two love each other, that is evident in the fact that you haven't given up. Kurt, I need you to understand that you are sorry to Bridget for cheating on her. And Bridget, you likewise have to understand that you're sorry for cheating on Kurt. Both of you have said you're sorry for hurting each other, but not for actually doing what you did. Until you both are sorry and understand that what you did was wrong, not just the hurt caused by it, you will never get past this. I have some homework for you. I want you each to go home and, sometime this week, do something to show your love for the other. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture, but it needs to show the depth of your love. We left the office together. Our relationship was strained, we both knew we loved each other, but the hurt was still there. That week, I showed Bridget my love for her by sending her roses every day, and on Friday, I brought her a diamond tennis bracelet. Of course, she loved it all, and she even showed her appreciation by cooking my favorites and showing me affection in a non-sexual way every night. Then, on Saturday night, when I walked into the bedroom, I noticed a new decoration on the wall above our bed. I don't know where she got it, probably Amazon or Pinterest or maybe Etsy, but it looked nice and expressed her love. That night, we made love like we hadn't in years. After an evening of good lovemaking, you'd think I would have slept like a baby. However, it was a fitful sleep, something was bothering me. In a dream, I saw a plaque on a wall that read, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." In the morning, I woke up and looked at the decoration on the wall. It was a plaque with a quote from our wedding vows. It read, "To love, honor, and cherish till death do us part." I think on Monday, I am going to cancel my life insurance.